They can't get their story straight at all. Fleischmann once said that the meltdown produced, quote, no untoward radiation. And Pons said that there was no noticeable radiation detected. And then even later, they gave a third version, where he said that the lab was, quote, contaminated. Okay, so then which is it? No matter the number, they were anywhere from 1 to 10 billion times fewer neutrons than they should expect. Orders of magnitude observed that their neutrons had no clear pattern. They appeared randomly in bursts. But all around us, cosmic rays from outer space result in small, random bursts of neutrons all the time. That is background radiation. A lab underground will have a lower background than one above ground, and even air pressure can have a huge impact. Apparently, to get their background level, they took 2 measurements, one right next to their cell, and then one at a spot 50 meters away. This is not a useful background test because the location is completely different. They should have instead measured the background at the same location once with the cell removed or turned off. Why were they being so vague with their numbers? Well, because they don't usually do this sort of work, they had to borrow a neutron detector. The thing is, the one they borrowed was a medical device, and so was normally used to measure large radiation spikes that might cause a health risk. It's really inaccurate for the low levels they were reporting. And the thing is, they seem to recognize all these issues. They knew their readings were far too low.
The rate of generation of tritium and the rate of generation of helium-3 is only 1/1000th of what you would expect if the fusion reactions were those experienced in high-energy physics.
But of course, the media covering the story would not have picked up on just how significant that detail was. Even the not-dead grad student himself, Marvin Hawkins, acknowledged this issue as early as April 14th. This is a damning admission. It shows that they were not seeing what theory predicted, but rather than assume they had made a mistake, they made a huge leap in logic, and ran with the idea that maybe the theory wasn't fully correct.
Theories are made to explain experimental data. We have the experimental data and we see no theory for it yet, so they're going to have to rethink some things.
That means there's some additional physics going on in the material that we do not yet understand.
Could it possibly mean there's a mistake?
No.
You're sure that it's right?
I'm sure.
It is a bold strategy to say the least, and one that they were forced to adopt because of their race to beat Stephen Jones. With this in mind, it does reframe Jones's work. Let's put aside the matter of priority for 1 minute. Steve Jones and have a state-of-the-art detector to do it, and they did a proper background test. His group was seeing literally just 2 neutrons per hour. Just 2. That is 10,000 times less than the already shockingly low number from Pons and Fleischmann. That amount should work out to just...
Number 1, there is fusion, cold nuclear fusion, at a very low level. Number 2, the level is not enough to lead us to suspect heat. Therefore, my conclusion is that we don't have heat due to fusion. I would say that cold fusion is hopeless as a source of energy.
This is a very, very critical difference, and the media coverage in the immediate aftermath did not do a great job of conveying this. Both groups are claiming something remarkable, but only Pons and Fleischmann are arguing this could be a new source of energy. To go back to Jones's favorite analogy, if his claim was $1, theirs was the national debt. He may not have been first, but his results certainly sounded more realistic. Indeed, among physicists, Pons and Fleischmann were viewed largely as quacks, but this Jones fellow, well, maybe there's something there. Although certainly the most obvious problem, the lack of neutrons was not the only issue people saw with the paper. Take the tritium, the other radioactive product you'd expect to see after fusion. In their paper, they reported 10 to 20,000 counts per second. Compared to the neutrons, this was around 10 times as much. But it was still 1 billion times too small to correspond to the heat they saw. It was also weird that they were seeing more tritium than neutrons. The 50-50 branching ratio means you should be seeing cosmic rays. The difference, though, is that this only happens in the upper atmosphere, and even then extremely rarely. However, the U of U chemistry department isn't exactly a good baseline. Labs that often deal with radioactive materials will leave behind radioactive contaminants. Heavy water, although primarily deuterium, will have tritium in it a few times higher than the normal background level. Not to mention, another common lab material is something called tritiated water, where all the hydrogen atoms have been replaced with tritium. It's a notorious contaminant that will get into the air if you're not careful. If you haven't assessed the tritium background before running the experiment, how do you know where the tritium came from? Let's go back to the main reason this is even supposed to work at all. Palladium absorbs deuterium like a sponge. So much deuterium packed so tightly causes astronomical pressure right now. The bottom of the ocean is around 1,000 atmospheres, and the pressure in the core of the sun is 100 billion atmospheres. And yet, Pons and Fleischmann claimed that their palladium rods were experiencing an effective pressure of 10 to the
D2, then you would need between 10 to the 26 and 10 to the 27 atmospheres of pressure.
That is 10 quadrillion times more than the core of the sun. This is such a baffling number and should have been a major red flag to either of them. Once again, this was a detail announced in their initial press conference, but the media reporting on it would not have picked up on the absurdity. As it turns out, they had made a basic mistake. They had used the wrong equation. When the correct equation is applied, the pressure in their cells is only 15,000 atmospheres. Higher than ambient, yes, but still far, far from their experiment was a basic control test. The most primitive control they could have run. Instead of using heavy water, use light water. Use hydrogen instead of deuterium. If heavy water produced excess heat, and light water didn't, then it was solid proof that fusion was behind the heat. But if light water also produced excess heat, it would suggest that there was some sort of mistake in their heat measurements. Pons and Fleischmann had simply not done a light water control. We know this because Fleischmann was asked this exact question by the director of CERN, Carlo Rubbia, at a publicly recorded talk. This is the actual audio of their exchange.
Martin, if you don't allow me to do that, by asking you a direct question, namely, all this is done with deuterium in the water. Did you ever try to do the same experiment, replacing deuterated water with ordinary water? If you do so, what happens?
I must confess to you that those experiments are just going on now, and we will hope to give you that answer very shortly. The reason we haven't done so is that if you do that experiment, you do in fact ruin the electrodes, and we have so far had very limited resources.
Those who were present recalled that several people gasped. His answer effectively boils down to, we didn't have time or money. But this just doesn't line up. Once, in the press conference, he said this.
We have tried very hard to prove ourselves wrong, all the way down the line.
Evidently, they didn't try hard enough. According to Marvin Hawkins, they didn't start running light water tests until late April, almost an entire month after they had announced to the world their breakthrough discovery. On April 9th, Stan Pons will claim that he ran light water controls. We know this because Chuck Martin, a good friend of Stanley Pons, called him up about an experiment that he had run.
What had happened was that Chuck Martin was doing experiments with both heavy water and light water. We now know what was incorrect with that particular experiment, that he had a bad earth connection to a thermometer, so power was entering the cell through the thermometer. Heavy water, we were really excited, and Pons said, that's great, I knew that somebody was going to reproduce it soon, I'm glad it was you. And then Martin said to him, but we have a problem, we are also seeing heat with light water. And
if he's run a light water control at the ACS meeting in Dallas, he responds, quote, a baseline reaction run with water is not necessarily a good baseline. We do not get the total blank experiment we expected. It is a cryptic way to answer that question. Publish the paper submitted to them by Pons and Fleischmann, as all three of its reviewers have been highly critical, and they focused in on the lack of a light water control. If they had truly been working on this for 5 entire years, how had they not once run a light water control? Pons was indignant. Quote, I'll argue that the control is taking a palladium rod that absolutely does not work and place that side by side to an experiment that is, in the same solution, and that is a control experiment. It's never done anything there but sit at you. This is nonsensical. You can only know that a palladium rod doesn't work until after you've tested it, by which point it can't be a control. Unless there is some measurable difference between the working and non-working palladium, this is worthless, and on April small, unmeasured amounts of heat. In summary, we really have no idea what their light water result was because Pons and Fleischmann don't seem to know either.
The referees in that journal, that is the people who decide whether to allow that article to be published or not, said they needed more information. The Utah group said, hey, listen, we don't have the time, we don't want to go through the trouble right now to provide you with information, give us our paper back, we won't even be bothered.
He also got Gary Triggs to send Nature a threatening letter. In a move that likely stung quite a bit, Nature did say that they would publish Stephen Jones's paper. You made a mistake, the proper course of action is to come out publicly, admit it, and either retract or correct it. Embarrassing, yes, but certainly not unethical. Where it turns into fraud is when you deliberately try to cover up that mistake. Just a couple weeks after their paper was published, they released an errata, adding the name of Marvin Hawkins. But in that same errata, they also changed a graph. They did not provide a reason why. If they had, it would have raised alarm bells. Unfortunately for them, at least one person had been paying close attention. A Boston Herald story is printed that quotes MIT physicist Ronald Parker, calling the work, quote, scientific schlock and possibly misrepresentation and maybe fraud. A few weeks earlier, Parker's group had attempted to repeat the experiment but hadn't seen any evidence of neutrons.
Our analysis indicates it's likely that many, many fewer neutrons were observed than claimed, if any at all.
Although they said they would keep at it. But this headline was a clear step up from the previous statement. Parker, likely fearing that he might get sued, later tried to deny that he said any such thing despite his interview being recorded. Given Pons' tendency to sick Gary Triggs on people, he was probably right to be worried.
MIT is used to being right on top of every scientific discovery. Just as it happens, that increases their frustration.
But his reason to suspect fraud seemed to be justified, thanks to a tip from a colleague named Richard Petrasso. Petrasso had claimed, it was, quote, just glib bullshit as far as we know. The only piece of evidence that made him remotely interested was the gamma ray spectra. Fusion is supposed to emit neutrons, that much you know by now. Because they were short on funds, Pons and Fleischmann borrowed a low-sensitivity neutron dosimeter. All this detector could do was count neutrons. They don't tell you anything about where those neutrons came from. If we could measure the energy of those neutrons, we could be far more certain they're coming from fusion. And so, we want to look for gamma rays. Gamma rays are high-energy photons, typically emitted by a radioactive source. By measuring all the gamma rays in a lab, you can plot them on an energy spectrum. It will have a sloping background level with lots of distinct peaks jutting up. Each peak is associated with well-known energy levels. This peak at 1.46 and 0.62 MeV, which comes from radioactive thallium. There is also a peak that can prove fusion is occurring. When a neutron is emitted into a water bath, it will gradually slow down until it collides with a proton and become captured by it. This emits a gamma ray, with very little wiggle room. A gamma ray from fusion should look like this, a peak at exactly 2.224. And in the paper published by Pons and Fleischmann, that's exactly what you see. A peak in almost the exact right spot. Except there was an earlier draft of this graph in at 2.5 MeV. There is no relevant radiation phenomena that occurs at 2.5. It is just straight up the wrong value. Pons and Fleischmann might have realized this if they had asked even just one colleague in U of U's physics department. Indeed, if the Journal of Electroanalytical Chemistry hadn't rushed the peer review process, they would have sent it out to a reviewer with knowledge of nuclear physics, who would have caught this problem and likely rejected the paper. Ultimately, though, the graph with 2.5 was never made public, because on March 28th, Fleischmann was giving a talk in the UK at Harwell Labs, and the audience members there immediately recognized the peak as a mistake. Later that day, he told Pons over the phone, and Pons then submitted a new graph with the peak moved to 2.22. Not just that though, the y-axis had been scaled from 20,000 down to 2,200, just 10% of what it used to be. In the facts he sent to Nature, he did not explain the reason for this correction. This, of course, is all behind the scenes, not public knowledge. When the paper was eventually published, the only hint that something had changed is that an equation still had 2.5 in it. Without knowing that the graph had been changed, people thought this was just a typo. Richard Petrasso initially thought the same, but fortunately for him, he happened to have friends who worked at Nature who had seen the original graph, and they let him know that the peak had changed. Now, Petrasso thinks that there is something highly suspicious going on, but beyond that, the new graph had other problems. For one, it was far too zoomed in. Sure, there may be something at 2.22, but unless you can see the full range of energies, you can't tell if it's a signal or if it's noise. The shape of the peak also looked weird. It's about half as wide as it should be. And there are distinct features that were missing to the left of the peak. There should be a slope known as the Compton edge. And even further left, there should be a bump known as the first escape peak. The Pons and Fleischmann graph lacked both of those. Petrasso wondered if there was a copy of the full spectrum somewhere. Luckily for him, Pons and Fleischmann had let a bunch of Utah news stations come in and film their lab. And so, he went and scoured every news clip he could find until he found a clip from CNN. In it was a computer screen with the full spectrum. Because he knows exactly where the peaks for potassium and thallium should be, Petrasso was able to scale the rest of the spectrum. And lo and behold, when he looked for the so-called fusion peak, it was at 2.5 and not 2.22. Petrasso began phoning people at U of U to get more info. He even sent a student to Salt Lake City just to see if any more news channels had more footage. Marvin Hawkins confirmed to Petrasso that the peak was originally measured at 2.5. But he wasn't the only person who backed that up. Pons had needed help with the gamma ray measurements, and so he had asked a medical radiation physicist named Robert Hoffman to perform them. In fact, Hoffman, just like Hawkins, had his name left off the paper at the last minute, a move that felt like a personal slight. After the press conference, Hoffman refused to work with Pons and Fleischmann ever again. Hoffman later ran some new tests and came to the conclusion that an issue with the preamplifier in the circuit caused artifacts in his spectrum. He wrote a letter on April 27th to Pons where he stated that there was no evidence for anything at 2.2 and that the 2.5 peak was an artifact. He was essentially retracting his data from their paper despite being left off as an author. Petrasso was outraged. With no explanation, Pons and Fleischmann appeared to have fabricated a critical piece of evidence. He began to write a paper lambasting them, which he would later submit to Nature. He was reportedly so angry about this that the original draft of his letter was so emotional he needed a colleague to help him tone it down. Nature will reach out to Pons for comment, and after he doesn't reply for weeks, they gave him a deadline. His response was apparently so May 18th. It will be a crushing blow to Pons and Fleischmann's credibility, an indisputable smoking gun. Gary Triggs will later attempt to block the paper, but this amounts to little more than idle threats. But Petrasso's paper wouldn't matter. That's one of the ironies of this story. Scientists knew just how damning the gamma rays were, but to the media, it was exposed the behind-the-scenes shenanigans, and he heavily implied fraud, or at least as far as UK libel law allowed him to.
I then spoke to Marvin Hawkins, the graduate student, and he didn't know either. And I said, let's get this straight. I said, it's clear that a peak was measured at 2.5. There are 4 people involved in this experiment. Fleischmann doesn't know how it's moved. Hoffman doesn't know how it's moved. Now you're telling me that you don't know how it's moved. And he said, I think you've got the picture now.
But by that point, it didn't matter. Cold fusion had been dead for a year.
5 laboratories have successfully repeated the experiment. 6 others have failed.
Tonight, other scientists at MIT and elsewhere are in the San Francisco Bay Area, where so many top-ranked scientists work.
And a Duke scientist says the problem with Pons and Fleischmann's work is that it amounts to sloppy science versus reproducible science. 2 groups of scientists at the University of Michigan announced today that they have found no evidence to confirm claims of a fusion reaction.
But back here in this country, a spokesman for the Los Alamos labs is denying earlier reports that scientists there were close to repeating the experiment.
Weeks earlier, lab after lab announced that they had confirmed part of cold fusion. But by now, just as many labs had declared the exact opposite. They couldn't see enough neutrons, tritium, or any gamma rays. For physicists, any of those three would be the gold standard proof of fusion, and yet they did not see them. But for chemists, the most compelling piece of evidence had always been the calorimetry, the heat. After all, if we go all the way back to 1985, we have the original piece of evidence that was so convincing, so unambiguous, that it swayed both Pons and Fleischmann into believing they had seen something nuclear. The mythical meltdown. A 1 centimeter cube of palladium had melted and left a hole in the lab bench and concrete. They could think of no chemical reaction that could cause so much damage, produce so much heat. It had to be nuclear. But the thing is, no one actually witnessed the event itself. All we know is that the cube melted. By this point, plenty of theories had been put forward that weren't so mythical. If you have a partially enclosed container that is slowly being filled with oxygen and hydrogen gas, and a bunch of it leaks out of the palladium all at once, all you'd need was a rogue spark called off their experiments because they had explosions. And their conclusions were that they had accidentally caused traditional chemical explosions. Nothing nuclear about it. Pons and Fleischmann have said repeatedly they could not think of a single non-nuclear explanation for the heat that they saw. They'd had 5 years to ponder this issue. Maybe they just lacked imagination. Even besides the meltdown, Pons and Fleischmann said that they had seen 300% excess heat. 4 watts out for every 1 watt in. It was those numbers that made the news. Those numbers that convinced the one electrochemist, in fact, who seriously doubted those numbers as well. Nathan Lewis was a 33-year-old professor at Caltech, with a solid reputation among his peers, especially for his age. Chuck Martin, a friend of both him and Stanley Pons, said, quote, "I'm not as young as Nate, and nobody's as smart as Nate." He called him, quote, "one of the most fiercely competitive son of a bitches you'll ever meet." On March 23rd, when cold fusion was announced, Nate absolutely needed to see this. Lewis's group at Caltech had been trying to replicate cold fusion since day one. Initially, Lewis let his postdocs do most of the work, as at first he was highly skeptical. He told them they were allowed at most a single day. But after talking to some peers and hearing more about Pons and Fleischmann, he figured maybe there was something to this. Quote, "They're a little flaky, but they're not crazy. I don't know what to think." What really got him interested was talking to a Caltech physicist named Steve Koonin, who told him about the extremely similar work by Steve Jones at BYU, who was known to be a fusion expert. The scandalous backstory there wasn't public yet, so to Lewis, this seemed like two groups independently stumbling onto the same thing. And so he directed his group to try and take a real crack at this thing. As the frenzy around cold fusion grew, Lewis's team grew to 15 chemists and physicists working side by side. Their neutron detector was around 100,000 times more sensitive than the one. In fact, the paper didn't list even a single temperature reading. It only reported results in terms of watts of power. Lewis had personally emailed Pons asking for more info, even just a preprint of the paper. Pons called him and was friendly, but said he'd have to wait for a copy. Lewis asked for anything, just anything he could give him, and Pons only gave him a cryptic warning. Quote, "Be careful, we've had explosions," and sharp edges. Lewis and his group would have to push forward using their best guesses. Weeks go by and they see nothing, and through the grapevine, they hear about some folks at MIT who think the gamma ray data is highly suspect. Lewis is convinced that this has all been a wild goose chase.
This is the Caltech cold fusion group, which of course was with the major anti-groups.
But even at this point, he wasn't willing to go public against it yet. Steve Koonin had invited him to speak at the upcoming American Physical Society meeting in Baltimore. This was going to be the physics equivalent of the Woodstock-level meeting in Dallas. Lewis initially declined the offer, but one night, he stayed up late to watch the congressional hearing on C-SPAN. It was there he saw the University of Utah ask for $25 million for unproven research. And it was also where Fleischmann divulged a piece of information that had not been public before. A comment so innocuous that no one in the room caught its significance. But Lewis did. And it was so offensive that he decided he couldn't sit back anymore. He phoned Steve Koonin back. He was going to speak in Baltimore, after all. Dallas had managed to attract 7,000 chemists into a basketball arena. APS in Baltimore would manage just 2,000. It is no Woodstock, and some likened it more to a political convention, but it will still go down as the stuff of legends. Steve Koonin gave one of the more memorable talks, and he had a dry sense of humor that played well on TV. Quote, "One could theorize about how pigs would behave if they had wings, but pigs don't have wings." He had been running computer simulations to see just how likely it was that deuterium would fuse at room temperature and was likely to occur in an entire year. To end his talk, he did not mince words.
Theoretically, I would say that the BYU results are dubious, but not impossible. My conclusion is that the current situation is gloomy, but not yet terminal, and one needs a few more sensitive experiments to decide what's going on. Let me then turn to the Utah experiments. My conclusion, based on my experience, my knowledge of nuclear physics, and my intuition, is that the experiments are just wrong, and that we're suffering from the incompetence and perhaps delusion of Drs. Pons and Fleischmann.
Now, by the standards of an academic conference, Koonin had dropped a bomb. But this was still a toned-down version of what he'd wanted to say. The Caltech lawyers had told him to hit a triple, then Lewis was about to hit a home run.
Well, Steve, you really shook him up. Steve knows something about the experiments I'm going to tell you about, so he's a little justified. There are two pieces of news. One, I'm a chemist. Two, I'm an objective scientist.
He starts out with the questions many in the audience had been asking. Where are the neutrons? Where is the tritium? He also gets a small jab in about the gamma rays.
We never saw anything above the background. And to prove that to you, I'll show you the foreground, and I'll show you the whole spectrum, not just one peak. And you see that we basically, if anything, see a little bit of negative peak in the 2.2 region.
But soon, he'd move on to the real issue in his area of specialty, the calorimetry, the heat.
Let's turn to heat. Heat is confusing to almost everyone, including almost all of my electrochemical friends, and I will try to walk you through this and you will be shocked. Guaranteed.
Calorimetry is not as simple as pumping in electricity and seeing the change in the water's temperature. You need to measure how fast the water is heating up. Accurate calorimetry needs a closed system. You have a box, and you make sure no heat is entering or leaving that box without being accounted for. Notably, the Pons and oxygen gas, it's fair to assume that not all of it will be absorbed by the palladium, and some of it may escape the cell into the rest of the lab. Now, this is not inherently flawed as a setup. In fact, compared to a closed cell, this is a much safer design that reduces the risk of explosions. As long as you're keeping track of the gases leaving the cell, your calculations can still be accurate. But Lewis argued that Pons and Fleischmann's math only worked out if you assumed that 100% of the gases escaped. However, in reality, some percentage of the gases will recombine back into the water, injecting small bursts of heat into the system. Lewis argued they had no way to prove that wasn't happening. Another flaky assumption was that the temperature in the cell was uniform. Lewis argued that the cells could easily have hot and cold spots. Even something as simple as stirring or using multiple thermometers would help eliminate potential errors. Lewis gets a major laugh when he explains how his team got the dimensions for the fusion cell.
We built an exact cell as best we could from all the press photos that we had of the Pons-Fleischmann cell. We measured the ratio of their wrist to their arm and got a good scale length. And we built the cell.
But by far the biggest bomb dropped during Lewis's presentation was the realization he had while watching Pons and Fleischmann on C-SPAN.
Where do these last numbers come from? The 4-to-1 and 10-to-1. By the way, these last two numbers, the biggest two, are calculated in error even by their own formulas. This 1224 should really be only 306, and this 286 should really be 143. But that's not the real part. If you read the congressional record, and you look on C-SPAN, I told them that we knew this, and they didn't report.
Which I'll show you, one of the sets of calculations which I'll show you on the next slide, and is really a hypothetical energy release. I'd stress that because it involves the recalculation of our data.
And he said it so casually so quickly before moving on to another point that no one caught what he meant. But he had just admitted that the heat values, the 1 watt in and the 4 watts out, weren't measured directly. They were theoretical.
But Fleischmann pointed out, if you read it very closely, that the third column numbers were hypothetical, and he knew that we knew that. So he did point it out for the first time in public last Wednesday.
They had measured a palladium rod that was 1.25 centimeters long. But through some scaling process they did not explain, they extrapolated this result to a 10 centimeter long rod. So in their extrapolation, they could get 300% excess heat, but their average measured value was only 27%. Obviously, that's still in the green, but compared to 300%, this was a much, much smaller number, which meant there is plenty of room for error in the calorimetry.
And instead of dividing it by the total power in, they divided it by an imaginary quantity. The current times an assumed voltage, half a volt. Not the voltages they measured, just the voltage they assumed. All of these were this numerator divided by this fixed, arbitrarily chosen voltage. And so those numbers in the third column were scaled based on this arbitrary choice of half a volt. And that's where the 4-to-1 and 10-to-1 that are reported in their paper come from. I just want to make sure that that is clear. So we have no evidence for neutrons. We have no evidence for gamma rays above background. We have no evidence for tritium production at any reasonable rates. We have no evidence for ambient helium, above ambient. And we have no evidence for any excess enthalpy in our measurements.
As soon as he finishes, the applause is roaring. It lasts an entire minute. Lewis himself said that he felt like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Lewis had spoken quickly and with confidence, and he had plenty of quips to share with the media.
This experiment hasn't been reproduced by any national laboratory or any university yet without a good football team.
The Lewis talk was so devastating that around half the audience left the conference immediately after. An organizer tried to get them back to work, meaning they had more talks to listen to. One person shouted back, "We are getting back to work." Pons and Fleischmann, despite an extended invitation, declined to attend Baltimore. They were right to avoid it. An editor for Nature, David Lindley, called the conference, quote, "a hanging party lacking only its intended victims." Notably, Steve Jones did accept an invitation. If you remember, it was an abstract he had submitted to APS in February mentioning cold fusion that had kicked off this entire chain of events. By now, his set of talking points was locked in. His dollar versus the national debt. Fun at Pons and Fleischmann.
Last night upon the stair, I saw a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away.
I have no idea what this means. The rehearsed nature of his talking points helped to cover up the fact that he was extremely stressed from all the public attention and criticism. He was still being accused of stealing the idea, and was no doubt covering his bases with BYU's lawyers. One reporter from the LA Times said that Jones had lost 13 pounds in the past few weeks from stress. Still keen to assert himself as the rational cold fusion discoverer, at a panel of 9, including himself, he proposed a show of hands vote as to whether the group believed Pons and Fleischmann's results were real. The vote went 8-1 against. When he asked the same question about his own work, the vote was better, 6 in his favor, 3 against. His neutron rate of just 2 per hour was so low, some thought he had just measured a cosmic ray burst and was deluding himself. Others found his presentation tacky, a chance to grandstand with Pons and Fleischmann being absent. He even showed off his legally notarized logbook pages, which made him seem more interested in patent rights than figuring out any scientific truth.
Some of the physicists who've heard Jones use that analogy say they don't think the sprout is a tree or a flower. They think it's a weed.
This was still the Pons and Fleischmann show, and Jones's attempts to redirect the spotlight were floundering. The APS conference threw a wet blanket all over Washington.
Today, White House Chief of Staff John Sununu was supposed to meet with U of U fusion chemist Stanley Pons, but Sununu canceled. To top it off, the House Science Committee was supposed to visit Pons' lab next week, but today the committee canceled.
When we look back on the history of this scandal, most point to Nathan Lewis's talk as the fatal blow. But many scientists had already chosen sides by this point. In an audience of mainly physicists, he was just reinforcing a view that many of them already believed. He wasn't the first to come out against, nor was he the most famous or even the most vocal. His presentation, while more interesting than your typical academic talk, would quickly bore the average person. Maybe part of it is the night CNN was running the story, and the tide was beginning to turn.
Scientists meeting in Baltimore have declared cold fusion studies at the University of Utah dead.
I think it's improbable in the Jones case, but not impossible. I believe that it's impossible in the Utah case. Either there's some secret ingredient or some uncontrolled variables that they're not telling us about, or B, that it's wrong. I'd put my bets on the latter right now.
The number of experiments that have been done in the University of Utah is very few. I mean, it's incredible in 5.5 years they've done so little.
Tens of millions of dollars are at stake, dear sister and brother, because some scientists put a thermometer at one place and not another.
The Times remarked, the government would do better to put the money on a horse.
Whether you want to attribute it to Baltimore or the public's short attention span, the media decided that as of early May, cold fusion fever was over. Lewis's talk was held on May 1st. This graph of articles on a week-by-week basis shows that there was a massive plummet the week following the conference. And despite a small spike the week after, interest had died by June and would never recover.
It hits the cover of Business Week, Time and Newsweek.
This is the last time cold fusion will receive this level of mainstream spotlight. Only local Utah media will continue to cover it with any consistency. But as one physicist said at the time, the corpse of cold fusion will probably continue to twitch for a while. I don't think he realized just how bang on he was. Hey, are you dying to see the end of the trilogy, like right now? Well, you can watch it early on Nebula. Nebula is the creator-owned streaming service I'm a part of alongside some of the best educational creators on the internet. There you can watch my videos and many more completely ad-free. Not only do I post my videos 2 weeks early there, but you can also find dozens of Nebula originals not found anywhere else. Speaking of which, I'm very excited to announce that I'm directing a feature-length documentary called 17 Pages, by far my biggest project yet. It covers one of the most famous controversies in American science. We've been flying out on location to film interviews, I've commissioned some amazing art, and I'm even going to be working with a composer for the music. It will be releasing exclusively on Nebula in early 2025. Support me is by signing up to Nebula using my link. With it, you'll get a 40% discount on an annual subscription, which works out to just $3 a month. A significant chunk of that money goes directly to me for as long as you're subscribed, which will help me make bigger and better documentaries. Support me and many others by signing up for Nebula today. As always, thanks for watching.
Zig and Sharko is a talkless show about a hyena named Zig that wants to viciously devour a mermaid named Marina. However, her protector, Sharko, refuses to let that happen. Throughout its countless episodes, spread across 4 seasons, there has been a massive story developing, with a wild mythological island, fursuits, and time travel, and I am going to uncover it all. But first, as you all know, I'm running for President of the United States of America. I am still beating Dung in every poll there is, so we're looking good on that front. Now it's time I reveal my vice president choice, with not many options out there. My vice presidential pick is a rabbit. I don't know which one. There's a lot of them. He's not intelligent and doesn't have any good qualities. VP picks aren't really that important anyway, so this shouldn't sway your vote really. But Rabbit, please, give us a speech. Zig and Sharko. It's a little goofy show you've probably seen. It began airing in December of 2010 and ran all the way into this year, 2024, and has since ended with 4 seasons and a spin-off show called The Adventures of Bernie. The show is about Zig, a hyena that lives on a deserted island in the middle of nowhere and constantly dreams of eating a mermaid named Marina. She lives her life out on a small rock pillar in the ocean not far from Zig. Always protecting her is her boyfriend, Sharko, obviously a shark. Zig and his best friend Bernie, a super genius little hermit crab, plot to outsmart Sharko to eat Marina, but can never do it due to Sharko's brute force and only 7 minutes long. Let's do a little math. 7 times 78 is 546, times 4 is 2,184, divided by 60... Yup. 36.4 hours, not including the spin-off. I watched all of that in a short period of time, and I am slightly less normal now. It's fine. With all that content, it's a pretty good show, right? Yeah, actually, I was kind of surprised. It is a good show for the first 2 seasons. And then the last 2 get a bit iffy. First, let's introduce our 4 main characters. Zig, a hyena from Africa, and has grown up on this island since he was a baby. With nothing on the island, Marina is his only food option. He really wants to consume her, which doesn't make much sense because she is definitely not the only thing left to eat. Zig is unrelenting, irreverent, and most importantly, hungry. Every episode he tries to eat her, and is always foiled, but he never gives up though. Sharko is the sworn protector of Marina. In the beginning, we know that he has feelings for her, but doesn't really act on them. But eventually, he gets all mushy. Zig is lurking. Marina is a mermaid, and Zig's desired lunch. She's completely clueless though, and pretty dumb. Throughout all these episodes, she never really gets that Zig is trying to eat her. After the first time he puts her in her mouth, shame on him. But after like the 50th time, you better pick up on something. Bernie is a hermit crab. He is a super genius, basically Jimmy Neutron in crab form. He could care less about eating Marina, but most generally helps Zig to try and achieve his goals. Bernie pretty much just goes along for the ride. He loves Zig. In fact, they're adopted brothers, but he's also friends with Sharko and Marina. In fact, all 4 of them are friends, which really confuses the plot. The final character I will touch on is King Neptune. Like Marina, he's an idiot, and he has the hots for her, going as far as taking her for his own, which Sharko doesn't appreciate. He appears in just a handful of episodes, enough to make him noteworthy, but not consequential. After season 1, King Neptune completely disappears and is never heard from again. Did he move away, or was he consumed? We may never know. Personally, I don't care. He was a terrible person, if mermen are considered people. All he did was exploit Marina. There are so many more characters that I will talk about, but they are too minor in Wile E. Coyote. Like I've already said, Zig tries to eat Marina and Sharko protects her, obliterating Zig in the process. There's a lot of that. Every episode just about boils down to that, actually. Sometimes a boat drops off a new gadget or tool Zig and Bernie can use, or some natural event takes place, or some other sea creature comes into play. But it all comes back to Zig trying to chomp down on some mermaid tail. But with all these little random occurrences that assist with the extra plot, it begins to create a lot of questions as to why it happens, and I will explore this in so much more depth later. First, I'm going to go over the somewhat linear story throughout the 4 seasons. Season 1 doesn't have much story. Sharko and Marina live together under the sea in a house. Even though they live together, it's really weird how bashful Sharko is when anything relationship related is brought up. He acts like he has a crush on her and hasn't professed his love yet. Eventually, when his parents come around, he pretends he isn't with Marina, and instead, Zig wears a shark suit made of walrus fur. He fears his shark parents will disapprove of his interspecies breeding. He eventually comes clean and they approve of it, so Sharko proposes to Marina. After this, there isn't too much story building. Their shenanigans continue as they have been until the very beginning of Season 2. In Season 2, Sharko and Marina move to the beach, into a giant sandcastle. Zig and Bernie are kicked off their turf and live in a crashed cargo plane. Inside the cargo plane is a new character, Aldo, the pilot of the plane. He crashed the plane by accidentally setting his coffee on essentially an off button, so the plane crashed on the island. It's unknown hatchers, creating a whole little town on the beach. Another new character is Poseidon, who is Marina's father. So yeah, she's like part deity. He is super protective, and Sharko has to win him over, which he does. Poseidon isn't in the season a ton, but does come into play when they've exhausted all options and need his help. And the opposite of Poseidon is another deity that lives inside the volcano, none other than Hades. Just like Zig, he wants Marina. However, it's for a spouse. In one of his attempts to take her, he shapeshifts into a cute panda that Marina becomes infatuated with. Zig, Sharko, and Bernie work together to get Marina back, but is no match for, a literal god, but Poseidon is, so he rescues his daughter. Besides that episode, and a very small handful of others, Hades doesn't appear at all. From what I can gather online, the common consensus is that after Season 1, the show got bad. I disagree, but also, I didn't grow up with it, so I don't have any nostalgia bias. The second season is still good, but it loses a lot of what made it Zig and Sharko, mainly Zig's main goal, eating Marina. Now with all these creatures on the beach, there was absolutely no reason why he had to eat Marina. He had plenty of options. Like, even the creatures on the beach eat food, so Zig could have just had some of theirs. Personally, I think that's probably a better solution than, murder? The other thing that detracts from his main goal is that Season 1 as well, but the instances were few and far between. Now with their constant camaraderie, why are you trying to consume your friend? It began to lose a little bit of meaning. Another sizable component in this season was the flashbacks to their childhood. In Season 1, there was an entire episode dedicated to Zig returning to his homeland of Africa. But now in Season 2, they retcon that. And I don't really think it was a bad thing. The new backstory is that Zig and Bernie were adopted by a gorilla, and she became their mother. It's also revealed that Zig and Bernie grew up together and were friends with Sharko and Marina. In these flashbacks, we also meet their soon-to-be daddy, another gorilla, who they abandon in some Arctic tundra, but ultimately bring him back because their mommy was angry and sad. In 2 of the flashback episodes, they end with showing the apes on a cruise ship enjoying their golden years together. So that's why they don't show up in the rest of the show. There is a different episode where 3 of Zig's cousins come to visit, presumably from Africa, and this episode came out after the flashbacks, and thus makes it really confusing. If he has cousins, he knows his family. Not saying he couldn't have been adopted still, but they certainly portray it as Zig just appeared on the island one day without prior knowledge. Besides their flashbacks, nothing story building wise really happens. One of the later episodes in the season, Sharko proposes to Marina. Again, I guess I thought they were married already, but I don't know. They've been living together for 2 seasons now. They've grown up with each other. I guess they just retconned the last proposal. Bernie also finds love with the starfish, the very same starfish Marina wears in her hair. And finally, just like last season, there is no big finale, just an ordinary episode. And now the 3rd season. It starts to get old. Everyone moves off the island and onto a cruise ship, and this is where the entire season takes place, with a few exceptions. Aldo is now employed as the ship captain. The entirety of the beach civilization lives on the boat. Kinda stupid on Sharko's part not to throw Zig and Bernie overboard, because they once again try to feast on the mermaid. Not much happens this season. Hades has 2 or 3 appearances, so he's basically out of this season. Poseidon is also barely in it. However, there's tons of new characters, but each only appear for 1 episode. After this season, they become really sick of the sea and want to go back to the island. So, they go back. And now they dock their boat on the beach. So they utilize both the beach and the ship this season. Just when you thought this show was going to end without becoming a fetish show, Marina gets feet. She gets magical flip-flops that there's no huge events, just feet. This was the final season. Like all of their season finales, nothing finale-like happens. It's as if it's another episode. Between season 3 and 4, the spin-off show called The Adventures of Bernie was released. The exact timeline of the show isn't really certain, so I'm just going to assume it takes place after season 4. Zig and Bernie try once again to capture Marina, but Bernie is accidentally launched into the ocean and then is forced even farther away from the island after a string of events. Bernie spends the entire series trying to get back to Zig and his friends, which make close to no appearances. Well, in the finale of this series, Bernie does not make it home. Finales aren't really Zig and Charco's thing. Who knows what happened to Bernie? Some say he's still trying to get home till this day. And that's about it for the lore. Thank you all for watching. Wait, hang on. Stop the music. I'm not done. I have to talk about how obscure this island is. The most deranged and mysterious place. There's so many unanswered questions about it. If this island is so deserted with no population, why do boats and freighters stop by? Why do submarines observe it? Why do planes fly over? How and why are there man-made structures on the island? For example, there's a lighthouse and some sort of enclosure for presumably some creature on the island. And connected to this enclosure is an entire room for surveillance with working electricity. Why are there aliens that come and visit? Why is there an entire city down a crevice called the Abyss that is very similar to Rock Bottom from SpongeBob? Why does a god live in a volcano? I think you're starting to see my point. What is so special to do with it? She is a mermaid after all, one of the elusive creatures like Bigfoot. Maybe the government or whoever is spying on this place because they know she resides there. Maybe the cage aquarium and surveillance area on the island was for her, but then again, who made it? Marina isn't the only mermaid out there. There's one called the Manic Mermaid, and Charco falls for her too. My guy definitely has a type. But maybe the cage was made for this mermaid. The show does give an answer, however, but I don't buy it. In multiple episodes, the cage is shown holding the Crazy Dolphin, a character that appears a few times in Season 1. However, there are a few episodes where the Crazy Dolphin is nowhere to be seen and the cage is completely empty. And on top of that, the dolphin is just super hyperactive. Why would they need a prison-like cage with surveillance for it? Anyway, back to spying on Marina. The lighthouse makes sense. It's for the freighters, but the freighters don't make sense. A possible reason could be that the island is just another thing the freighters pass by. However, in the lighthouse episode, when the lighthouse stops shining the light for a brief period of time, it shows truly how many boats get lost without it. And with this many boats, the simple passing by excuse doesn't make much sense. The Abyss, aka Zig and Charco's version of Rock Bottom. Zig and Charco get stuck down there and have to escape due to being wanted by the police down there. So, like SpongeBob's Rock Bottom, the creatures down there are very, very weird. This episode may seem like a standalone. However, there are several other episodes where extremely weird creatures are featured. The most prominent episode being about a shape-shifting jellyfish. Zig then uses this jellyfish to try and capture Marina, unsuccessfully of course. Another episode features an electric eel that zaps both Zig and Charco at the same time, which then switches their minds, so Zig ends up in Charco's body and vice versa. The final creature is the alien that visits the island. He arrives on a UFO, so he maybe isn't from the Abyss. However, he appears extremely similar to the Abyss creatures. Not only that, but he can shapeshift just like the jellyfish. This stuff is weird, but it's about as bad as it gets, right? There's not like unicorns or something, right? Okay, so there is a unicorn that shows up for an episode. So what? Okay, lizard people show up for an episode and give Zig super protection and doesn't let Charco lay a finger on him. They end up using Zig's body for toy models for monetary gain. Not exactly what I would have expected. Why does all this weird stuff happen? Is there a cause? Could Hades be pulling the strings? Are there any creatures capable of magic? Of course there is. Buried in the sand, they find a tip of a pyramid. They investigate and find a mummy living inside. Because, of course they do. Unlike most super minor characters, the mummy actually comes back for another episode. She comes back with multiple cursed items to sell to the beach dwellers. She could be behind these weird creatures. Or the weird creatures could simply be like Marina, and just live there like she does, as a result of something. The creatures may not be the only thing that attracts the people to the island. In one episode, there is just a random button on a tree. When pressed, you are taken to essentially the void, but it makes you dance. It's a dancing dimension. So, basically, well, I don't know how to say this without just saying it. Well, I guess, Zig and Charco wear fursuits. I don't know if Zig is really a hyena, and I don't really know if Sharko is a shark. Every single episode, for the most part, at least 90% of the episodes, have one or more instances that show Zig and Sharko are wearing essentially skin or fursuits, or have a removable body part. When you actually pay attention to how often it occurs, it gets a little disturbing. Constantly, they are taking their fur off, or arms, eyes, whatever. In one episode, his and Sharko's noses switch briefly. In the flashback episodes, Zig's nose is used as a phone. They do this for a visual gag, obviously, and we can chalk this up to being an overused one, but it happens way too often. In Season 1, nearly every episode resulted in Zig getting his body destroyed beyond repair. Yet he is fine, because he actually may not be a living creature. Look at this example. Zig wakes up, not wearing fur, cleans himself up, and then his entire body opens like a suit, and another Zig walks out of that. And Sharko, if he was a shark, he wouldn't be able to live outside of the water, but he is barely in water the entire 4 seasons. Look at this example. Sharko completely unzips his suit. Another thing that he doesn't wear sleeves. There's a lot more than this, but I'm not interested in editing a 25-minute Zig and Sharko furry suit compilation. If they aren't animals, what are they? Could be that they are robots. In one episode, Bernie makes an entire army of Zig robots, but they were definitely more primitive than the Zig we know. There is a separate episode, however, where Bernie bionically modifies Zig, and on Bernie's little diagram thing here, it essentially shows Zig's entire body is bionic, which also could explain the phone in his nose. There's a lot of inconsistencies though. If Bernie created Zig, which is unlikely, but if he did, why would he create Sharko to beat him up? If Zig was a robot, why would he constantly be hungry for Marina? But anyway, why do they wear fursuits? I guess I don't have an answer for that. But then again, why does anyone wear fursuits? Not only does Zig like to wear fursuits, but he also cross-dresses like a woman. Like 3 separate times, so I guess he's into that too? Wait, what? Further on the skin and fursuits, Zig and Sharko aren't the only ones. Zig's plans early on mostly consisted of stealing skin, fur, and other body parts from the fellow animals on the island. A few examples: he stole the fur off of a gorilla, he stole the skin or fur, whatever walruses have, and he stole to be a dolphin in a seal suit. Other details that don't exactly hide that the fur is a suit is sometimes when they have their suits removed, they are wearing underwear underneath it, as if it's an outer layer and not just part of them. There's one more question you might have. Well, realistically, after that huge information dump, there's probably a lot of questions. But one question we've wondered since the beginning of this show: does Zig ever win and eat Marina? Surprisingly, yeah. Zig does consume Marina. Many times actually. All in one episode. One average day, Zig begins to eat Marina. Sharko comes to the rescue, but after multiple things in his way, he is unable to save her, and Zig eats her. Sharko is devastated. When he wanders through the forest, he happens to find Hades, abusing a gorilla with his time machine device. He watches the gorilla slip on a banana peel, reverses time just a little bit, and watches it again. Sharko steals this time travel device and does the same thing with Marina. However, he fails again, and Zig eats her. So he reverses time again, but fails. So he reverses obstacles and finally rescue Marina from Zig. There you are. Zig finally won for once. Well, this video went so much deeper than what I could have possibly imagined. Remember, the election is near, and I have to win against my opponent Dung in November. You can vote for me by subscribing. At this point, you've probably heard it, but you don't have to be American, and you don't have to be 18, so there's literally no reason why you shouldn't subscribe.
Hello, my name is Emma. My Little Pony was a staple in not only my childhood and early teens, but also my artistic start. It wasn't until I started drawing these little ponies that I truly started to take illustration seriously. My Little Pony really sparked so many people creatively. Fan art was endless, songs gained virality and are still talked about to this day, but one of the most infamous things that the Brony fandom produced, in my opinion, was fanfictions. Fanfictions proved to be one of the most memorable and popular things out of this enormous blip in fandom history. You had Cupcakes, one of the most popular creepypastas of all time, Fallout Equestria, which was based on the Fallout games, which was unofficially released and published with original artwork and hardback covered books. Crazy. And of course, the fanfiction turned YouTube audio drama that we will focus on today, Bride of Discord. In this video, we will be going over eagerly for a new episode to come out, and some of the interesting choices that were made for it. Additionally, as we talk, I will be drawing my own designs of Fluttershy and Discord. Interpretations of characters into something else can be challenging, and that's why I use today's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest learning community for creatives with thousands of Discord was created very early on in the fandom. This section will be explaining some things that may be unfamiliar to some, as well as a bit of a refresher in these characters / show, as well as the fandom around it. My Little Pony Friendship is Magic was a rebooted show based off the original 1980 toy line. The show was created by Lauren Faust and spanned 9 seasons, and that was not due only to the popularity amongst the young target audience, but also because of the massive audience of adult men who impacted the series to the point the show had no choice but to acknowledge it. Bronies changed a lot about how fandoms were perceived, and is one of the first known talk of his magic was a show following 6 main ponies known as the Main 6. You had Twilight Sparkle, Applejack, Rarity, Fluttershy, Rainbow Dash, and Pinkie Pie, as well as the humongous roster of characters surrounding them. Each episode followed them as they navigated problems and tensions amongst themselves, ending neatly in a little bow with a lesson learned. However, the show would deviate from this formula on occasion for a 2-part special either at the beginning or the end of any season, usually introducing a new pony or villain for the crew to meet or fight off, and the show did just that in the first episode of season 2, where we meet Discord, Lord of Chaos. Discord is a reoccurring character who started off as a villain but later had a redemption, as most villains on the show did. In the show, most of the Main 6 continued to be standoffish towards Discord, except one. Fluttershy and Discord did end up being best friends. These were a few years in at this point. I think a lot of people were behind the ship, but I honestly think Bride of Discord set this pairing in stone for many, including myself. The story was written by Disney Fanatic 2364 in 2013 and would months later be released in audio form on the creator's YouTube with individual voice actors and all, along with some original artwork to go with. It's a very unique and niche form of media, and a staple in a lot of people's childhoods. Alright, with that all explained, I think that was a good basis for the complete uninitiated viewer, so let's head into Episode 1, titled The Escape, starts off as an introduction explaining how the Main 6 defeated Discord, and what I'm guessing is pretty similar to how the show handled him as well. In the original show, the Main 6 used the Elements of Harmony, which are these necklaces / crown that each of them wear to magically defeat foes. They've had them since the first episode in the series, and used them for a long time during the show's duration. The 6 celebrate fighting off Discord, but soon discover that he is in fact missing after they turned him to stone, or so they thought they did.
Oh. Wait a second! Where's Discord? Don't you know anything, Pinkie? We turned him to stone, remember? I know that, but where's his statue?
The art in the first episode switches back and forth between show screenshots and original work, which is always the wrong ratio. But you know, getting the right ratio is hard. I won't fault them. I struggled with that for too long actually. They all freak out about Discord, and you can really get a sense of all the impressions of the characters, which varies heavily.
Oh, Pinky. It's right over. Hey, where is he?
You're right, where is he? He should be here. Where's he gone?
Oh my goodness. What are we gonna do? Where is he?
He should be right here. This big, giant, grotesque, ugly statue thing. But it's not here.
Most are pretty well done, but the one that stands out to me the most in the first episode is
What happened with the lasers and the rainbow and the glowing eyes and dramatic music coming from nowhere?
their voice actor's mic is much worse than the rest, which can be kind of jarring at points. I will say though, the person doing Fluttershy did a really good job.
It's normal. So what do we do now?
So after the 6 ponies find out Discord is missing, they go to the princesses for advice and tell them what happened. I was confused by this part at first because the illustrations don't always match up to what's happening in the story, so I couldn't see this transition. We just cut to Pinkie Pie's ramblings, which is something.
And when all the chocolate rain and cotton candy was gone, so was Discord. He wasn't even a statue. I mean, it would make sense if he turned into a statue, right? Since that's what happened last time, right? And then we thought we had to vaporize some eternal gas and Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy.
But I can find this kind of thing very forgiving in a first episode of a YouTube series. The quality usually picks up after the creator learns more and more down the line, so it's okay. The series has a very good idea on how the elements of harmony work.
We didn't kill him, did we? No. It is not in the element's power to do such a deed.
Princess, what do they do exactly? I mean, the elements banished Nightmare Moon to the moon, but then later changed her back to good. Why did they turn Discord to stone? And where is he now? We didn't kill him, did we?
Princess Celestia does explain that the elements restore harmony, whatever that may be. They don't kill people, but Discord didn't get turned to stone because he escaped before the elements could have an effect on him. The princess explains that they must wear their elements at all time from this point forward because Discord is still out there and could attack after figuring out what he's going to do. Twilight agrees, but Rainbow Dash is pissed because she wants to fight.
I'm gonna find that punk, give him a piece of my mind. Ow! Watch it!
I think that's very in character for how show Rainbow Dash is, but regardless, they follow what the princess says. Twilight's narration explains that now 3 years have passed. They moved on with their lives and everything seems fine, but as it turns out, they were all wrong. Cue intro. It's so long, but man does this thing have a huge cast. AI could never recreate Bride of Discord. This is all human, baby. So it's 3 years later and the main 6 are heading to Canterlot for the Grand Galloping Gala, which is basically this annual fancy party that is in the original show and is a big deal to these ponies. This time skip also has Twilight's transition into being an alicorn princess, which did happen in the show as well. She used to be a unicorn, but now she has wings and is a princess now, marketable. All of the ponies are doing their part for the Grand Galloping Gala. Fluttershy has her singing birds, Rarity's making dresses, Applejack is selling food, Pinkie Pie's decorating. This creator has a very good grasp on these characters' personalities, and I think does a good job conveying how they are canonically, even if it is a little bit on the nose sometimes.
Wait a second! You're having a baby?
Which is fine. It's a fanfiction. This fanfiction predicts a lot of things that actually happen in the show before it actually does, but thankfully not to what we are introduced to next, very subtly.
You made it!
Back. It's so great to...
How have you been, Rarity? Oh, you know, the usual.
Doesn't bother asking how I've been.
You okay, Applejack?
Huh? Oh, Yeah.
The most unfortunate thing this fanfiction has in it is Applejack's crush on Spike the Dragon. Spike is another main character that everyone kind of glosses over for the most part. He's a baby dragon and is basically Twilight's child to some extent. She's had Spike since she was little and taken care of him ever since. I will say, at least in the very beginning of the show, it's a little hard to tell what Spike's age is since we had no other dragons to go off of, but as the show progressed, it was clear that Spike was a baby and is mentioned to be a baby multiple times. So Applejack having a crush on him is something. Spike in the show has a crush on Rarity. When I was younger, I could kind of see Spike and Rarity happen, but as I've gotten older, I realized that it was just a child having a crush on an adult, which is a normal thing that a lot of people go through. I think maybe the fan fiction creators saw this as a good way to have more drama in a love triangle, but Spike is not aged up at all from the show. So it ends up falling flat, and I don't really like this element at all. Also, I want to take a chance to say that every time Spike's voice actor is on, I laugh.
But you can't leave right now. The gala's tomorrow.
It's not a bad Spike impression, it's just his lines just catch me off guard. Later on, Fluttershy is practicing with her birds for the Grand Galloping Gala, and Applejack goes and confronts her about being off lately. Fluttershy reveals that she's been having continuous nightmares about Discord.
It's all in your imagination. Discord's not coming back, and he's certainly not gonna take you away.
Applejack says, "Oh, it'll be okay. He's not gonna come back," and the series ends. Just kidding. Applejack and Fluttershy do have a very good relationship in this fanfiction. I really enjoy watching their dynamic. I feel like it's not explored in the show too often. Applejack rarely gets the spotlight at all in fandom spaces, so it's refreshing to see her character, even if she is focused on one thing almost all the time. Cut to Discord. This is the first instance we see of Discord. I think his voice actor is pretty good. It does get a little grating at some points, but overall, not bad. Discord is plotting from his hideout and is excited to surprise the ponies. Discord is a very mustache-twirling villain in the beginning, but I don't think that's far off from how he actually is in the show. Princess Luna and Princess Celestia get a note from Spike. Spike has the ability to transport messages through breathing his fire. He basically burps the message. The message says that Saddle Arabia is in trouble, nice pun, and that the princesses, excluding Twilight, need to be there to help them.
Why didn't they ask me to come? I'm not sure, but even if they requested all of us, one must stay behind. Twilight, you'll be in charge of everything, including the Grand Galloping Gala.
Me? Rule Equestria?
Twilight is a new princess at this point and is understandably freaked out. You think the princesses would have a better game plan for a situation like this? Like, is Twilight really qualified just because she grew a pair of wings? The princesses leave and the main six discuss a game plan, as well as talk about Fluttershy, who is noticeably struggling. For some reason, Rarity brings up the amount of suitors Fluttershy has.
That's not all that's different about her. You know, she's been receiving an enormous array of gentlecoat callers. Why, nearly every stallion in Ponyville is demanding to take her out.
Romance is never really a focus in the original show. It's either subtly alluded to or done in very small instances with characters you don't see very often. So it's a little surprising every time something like this is blatantly brought up in this fanfiction, at least for me. I mostly brought this part up because it's definitely supposed to allude to something, and I think it's an attempt to jam romance in so it's not jarring later on. I will say one thing this audio drama does really well is music mixing. The creator uses a mixture of scores from the show as well as various Disney movies, and I didn't realize how much Disney movies music evokes a feeling in me because it did change the vibe and it did elevate the quality in a big way. The music matches the emotions of the characters so well, and the transitions between them are phenomenal.
She's gonna faint! I got her. Oh. I know. I'm scared too. But don't worry, girls. We can pull this off if we all work together.
Yeehaw! Let's get to it! Well, what are we standing around here for? We have a dance to prepare. Fluttershy,
I don't know how they do it. I always struggle with something like that. I know that was kind of a random tangent, but I had to bring that up because it is interesting. Fluttershy's friends decide to try and perk up her confidence by forcing her to sing at the Grand Galloping Gala. If you know anything about Fluttershy, you know her main thing is being shy. She literally hates doing things like this, so why her friends think this is a good idea, I don't know. The three princesses travel to Saddle Arabia, but quickly find out that this is indeed a trap. What? Discord captures the three princesses.
Too late, your highnesses.
And that is the end of the first episode. Let's keep moving on to the next. Episode 2 is titled The Gala, and that title is very fitting because we open right in the midst of the Grand Galloping Gala. There's some dialogue from the orphans that Applejack decided to bring along. I didn't mention this before, but Applejack does volunteer work with them, so she requested that they would come along.
I've never been to the gala before.
Yay!
Oh, I wish I had a mommy to experience this with.
I think this was to show how the main six brings changes on what's the norm in Equestria, though these characters are never brought up again and seem to be a bit random. Pinkie Pie sings the Pony Pokey, which I think happens in the original episode of the gala, but this scene is just chaos. I think the crowd was supposed to blend more, but it just sounds like a bunch of people talking over one another. Rainbow Dash arrives, and this is the first time we've seen her since the time skip. She and the Wonderbolts are going to perform for the gala, which I think is very cute and fitting. In this episode, we truly start to see variation in art styles. Multiple different artists worked on the series, and they vary from show accurate like this one and more stylized, which I think is very interesting. I really enjoy all the artwork in this series, and the amount of original designs they had to come up with for clothing. Oh my god. All the outfits in this gala are not outfits the characters wore in the show. It's completely original new clothing for all of them, which is so cool. The difference in art styles is extremely prevalent when you look at the Cutie Mark Crusaders, who are introduced in this episode. The Cutie Mark Crusaders are three little fillies who don't have their cutie marks. They're best friends, and their mission is to get their little butt tattoo.
What do we call ourselves? The Blank Bottom Girls.
Cutie Mark Crusaders.
The Tango Trio. Cramming for cutie marks.
Cutie Mark Crusaders.
Blank Finders.
Cutie Mark Crusaders.
Well, who are we crusading against?
Your mom.
My mom is dead.
And in this episode, it's revealed that they did get their cutie marks. And I have to say, I like their cutie marks way more than what the show did with them. In the show, they get more individualized, which I like. I said the change of artwork is prevalent with the girls because some artists were confused on how old they were supposed to be. Like in some shots, they seem like teenagers, and then in others, they're like little kids. Also, I have to say, Sweetie Belle's voice actor is so cute.
I got it at the talent show. We were doing a comedy act, but no pony was laughing. When every pony clapped, I realized that not only do I love singing, but I'm good at it. Then I got my cutie mark.
So, Spike wants to dance with Rarity.
You know, Spike, if you want to dance, I could always...
Really? You do that?
Yeah, if you want to.
Can you really convince Rarity to dance with me?
Oh no, Spike, I was actually... I'll do my best.
And Applejack is sad, which is something that happens over and over and over again.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Applejack. What is it?
Look, Rarity, Spike really wants to dance with you.
Spike?
My little dragon friend.
Ah, yes. Princess Twilight's what,
Yes,
I heard.
yes, that's him. Rarity, you know Spike likes you and all. You really should.
Would you excuse us for a moment, Fancy Pants?
Of course, my dear.
Don't blow this for me.
Rarity is made out to be kind of a bad person in regards to Spike because she rejects him over and over again. Every pairing in this audio drama is straight, which is fine. However, there's a clear lack of male characters to choose from in this show, so every pairing kind of feels like a reach. And that is especially clear with Applejack and Spike. I suppose that there's at least one male character that fits each of the main six in the show, but Applejack really... But I think people were shipping them together at this point, right? I mean, ship what you want to ship, and ships don't have to make sense, but when you're pairing characters up just because they're boy-girl, I find it a little square peg round hole, if that makes sense. Fluttershy is noticeably absent from the party, so Rainbow Dash goes and finds her after Applejack says she's probably in the garden. Fluttershy is practicing her singing and is nervous about performing Adoy. Rainbow Dash finds her and they talk about how she has been really upset because of her nightmares.
Is it those nightmares? Yes. I can't help it. They just won't go away. And I have a bad feeling that he's going to come back. I'm so scared. Hey, it was just a dream. You've gotta hang loose. This is a party after all.
I personally think Fluttershy is way too scared of Discord for this to be set up as a romance. It's just not a very good start to a romance you're supposed to root for. There's always development to happen, of course, but the development in this fan fiction is more questionable than I remembered it to be. Discord sneaks into the party disguised as a pony and is basically waiting for his chance to pounce, while also roasting the frick out of this party.
So bored!
Bears and gentle colts.
Blah, blah, blah.
Well,
oh my tears!
Fluttershy gets announced to sing, and Discord has the awooga humana.
What are they all staring at? Heavens above! She's so... No! I'm not going through that again.
He's just immediately attracted to her. Fluttershy and the Cutie Mark Crusaders sing Somebody to Love by Queen, which is the start of a tradition in this series. Every song in this audio drama, which I forgot to mention, is a musical, by the way, is a cover with lyric changes, some bigger than others. It does fit in with the show because every so often there would be an original song within the episode, so I think they were probably just trying to emulate that. It's just funny to hear these already well-established modern songs in the My Little Pony universe.
Can any pony find me? Some pony to love. Some pony. Can any pony find
Also, this transition to a DeviantArt logo is just perfect. Truly a different time. Discord says he feels disgusted by her beautiful singing and finally makes his entrance to start chaos again. The voice actor's impression of Discord in this fanfiction is really giving the Grinch, like Jim Carrey's The Grinch. I would say his impression is kind of in between Robbie Rotten from Lazy Town and Jim Carrey's The Grinch.
We're only dancing. My dear Fluttershy, I had no idea you had such a lovely voice. Oh sure, give the pony wings and a crown and suddenly she's better than everyone.
Discord is written really well dialogue-wise. He has some funny little quips that feel really accurate. Discord reveals that he has taken the princesses and threatens that if they try to do anything to stop him, he will, I guess, kill them. That's what he implies, at least.
But if any of you ponies try to stop me, your princesses get it.
Discord returns Equestria to chaos with cotton candy clouds and chocolate milk rain. All the ponies panic and the main six try to make another game plan. They no longer wore their elements of harmony anymore because they didn't think they needed to. It's been 3 years, so they don't have their elements to defeat him, apparently. I'm wondering now, why didn't they just go and get them to stop him? The episode ends and we're on to... Episode 3, titled The Dilemma, opens with Discord spying on Cheerilee and Big Macintosh on a date. This scene is to set up Discord's want for love, which I think is a good thing, and something I rarely see in works like this.
Bet it's sickening. What with their kissy faces and their hoof holding and their intense stares and those passionate embraces. Yeah. Sickening.
You don't sound so convinced.
See the way they look at each other?
why they come up with certain ideas that might seem out of character, so this was refreshing. It seems to be an hour after Discord has released his chaos and so much has already happened. I feel like a week has passed, but no, it's only been like 40 minutes. The main six are trying to plan what they're going to do to stop him. Discord comes back to the castle to cause a little havoc and have another weird moment with Fluttershy.
Now that I think about it, you're not that bad to look at.
I'm not a big fan of helpless woman, scary mean man. Not my thing, but to each their own. Fluttershy does have some agency in the series. It's not like she's completely helpless. Discord mostly came back to discuss a deal to get their princesses back, Twilight's horn because he took Twilight's horn, and him to stop chaos, which is dragged on forever. I don't know. The way Discord explains it just feels like tying up in knots.
The way I see it, you want 3 things from me. Your horn, order in your land, and your princesses.
What is it you want?
For your horn, you will have to make a promise never to use your elements of harmony against me.
What? Why would we make a deal like that?
You want Princess Prissy to get her horn back, right? Tell you what, if any pony fails to keep their end of the bargain, anything goes. Meaning if I go back on my promise, you may do with the elements what you will.
And the other 2 things?
If I were to relieve Equestria of my chaos, well, I'd be quite bored. What can I do? I am the spirit of chaos and disharmony. All I'm asking is a teensy bit of land where I'm free to spread my glory.
Cadence!
And Luna!
And Celestia!
What will it take to get them back?
Oh, any pony in there? I said I wanted a bride in exchange for your princesses.
A bride? What would you do with a bride?
What would anyone do with a bride? I'd marry her. You know, spend eternity together, maybe have a few brats, kids.
You'd make a terrible dad.
Oh, shut up.
It's extremely clear that Discord has a physical attraction to Fluttershy, but he doesn't care who steps up to the plate to be his wife. Discord is a little creepo, but that's okay. He is the villain after all. At first, Discord wants his wife to come on her own and gives them 3 days to decide. No one wants to go with him, so it doesn't matter if they come up to the plate or not, it's still messed up. I also find it hard to believe that no one will come up to the plate. I mean, out of millions and millions of ponies, there's gotta be a freak pony out there. I mean, there's gotta be somebody out there who's like, yeah, Discord's hot. Like, where's the freak bobs? Hold on, Discord, I'm getting a call.
Hey man, it's Freak Bob. Thanks for answering. People usually don't answer.
Like I said, Discord does not care who marries him. He literally hits on every single pony.
Either of you willing to accept my proposal? What about you, Celestia? I always thought there was a little something between us.
Indeed. Hatred.
Ouch. How about you, Lulu?
Not even in your dreams. And don't call me Lulu.
And I'm already married, creep.
Hey, can't blame a guy for asking.
I know Discord is set up to be redeemed, but man oh man, are these scenes making it hard for me to want to see him be better? These ponies give Discord land in the Everfree Forest, which I thought was a good idea at first, but then I thought about the creatures who live in the forest, like, they gotta deal with him still. It's kind of messed up. Later on, Fluttershy has another nightmare about Discord, but this time it's different. It's freaky. I'm just kidding. But it's definitely in a more romantic context, but she doesn't like it still. Fluttershy goes for a snack after she can't sleep and bumps into Applejack. Fluttershy reveals that she wants to sacrifice herself for her friends.
Discord won't let them go unless some pony takes her place. I think that should be me.
No, you shouldn't. You can't.
Discord won't let them go unless some pony takes her place. I think that should be me.
No, you shouldn't. You can't. I'd rather go instead of you.
But you have your family to take care of. Twilight has her crown and shining armor. Rarity has her shop in Sweetie Belle. Rainbow Dash is a Wonderbolt. And Pinkie Pie has her job at Sugar Cube Corner to make every pony smile. I have no pony. No purpose.
What are you talking about? Of course you have a purpose.
Fluttershy has some really deep and heartbreaking dilemmas. It's clear that she has low self-esteem in this, to the point that she feels she left beginning they didn't have such a connection to each other already, because Fluttershy is the most afraid of Discord out of any pony, and Discord is the most attracted to Fluttershy out of any pony. So right off the bat, we're diving into some choppy waters. In the end of the episode, Applejack suggests that they go to someone for advice, and we end on a cliffhanger like every single one. Let's jump into Episode 4, The Decision, starts with Fluttershy and Applejack traveling to see Zecora in the Everfree Forest, who is a canon character. She is often portrayed as wise and gives the ponies advice. She's also one pony who is directly affected by Discord since he lives right next to her now. But I guess she's just got a deal. Applejack brought Fluttershy here because she doesn't want to discuss something like that with her other friends. The main 6 are not always the best in this series. They're kind of oblivious to a lot of things, and Applejack and Fluttershy never go to them for advice, ever. It's crazy. Zecora reads Fluttershy's tea and can see her future.
Well, I think
Fluttershy's thinking of being that bride.
Is that so? You wish to go?
Yes. No. Maybe?
But look, in your future I also see great happiness. And this is if you go with the Draconicus.
What? Give me that. You're not reading this right. How could she possibly be happy with Discord?
He may not be an angel from above, but perhaps all Discord needs is some love.
Zecora then reads Applejack's tea and says that she has conflict.
You do not want help alike on your conflicting emotions for Spike?
Now how did you... Come on, Fluttershy. I told you coming here was a waste of time.
Oh god. Applejack rudely leaves, and as they go home, Fluttershy and Applejack have a very cute heart-to-heart.
This is my choice, Applejack. I can take care of myself.
I know you can, Sugar. I've seen you face up to a manticore, a full-grown dragon, and a 3-headed dog. But Discord, he's rotten to the core.
Even though Applejack doesn't want Fluttershy to leave, she does support her in the end, which I think is very, very nice. That feeling was destroyed though when Fluttershy confronts Applejack about her crush on Spike, and she says it's just a school pony crush, which does not make me feel better. Fluttershy also asks Applejack if she will not tell the others that she's going to leave. So the next day, Fluttershy leaves without telling anyone and goes to Discord to tell him that she will be his bride. And he laughs in her face.
Who is the lucky mare?
Right here.
Come again.
I will be your bride.
It's because he thinks she's too shy, but that doesn't stop him from making another comment on her appearance.
She is pretty.
Well?
You'll do.
Discord proposes to her, and her friends arrive to try and stop this from happening. Part of the deal includes that Fluttershy won't be able to see her friends ever again and cannot leave the confines of Discord's property, which is really tragic and genuinely made me sad.
There is no other way. If I don't do this, Equestria's doomed forever, and Cadence will never have her baby.
What, do you have any idea what this monster might do to you?
He might feed you chocolate bunnies until you get a bellyache! No pony chooses my fate but me.
I'll miss you, Flutters.
I'll miss you too.
I'm gonna miss you so much! Don't forget us, okay? I mean, even though you'll never see us again, don't forget our names. I mean, it's easy to forget some.
At this point in my rewatch, I was feeling less romance and more sadness because the situation is really sad. Discord keeps his end of the bargain and releases the princesses. He teleports him and Fluttershy to their new castle home. I forgot to mention, but he does get Fluttershy an engagement ring, which doesn't make sense for this universe, especially when she has to wear it around her neck. Like, what? Discord shows Fluttershy inside of the castle, which makes her sick to the point that she passes out, and Discord says, "This
My. She's even lovelier when unconscious.
I'm not waving my Fluttercord flag, guys. No. The episode ends as Discord puts Fluttershy to sleep, and now we'll move on to the halfway point of the series. Episode 5, titled The Gift, is the episode. Everyone was waiting up until this point for some interaction between the main love interest. Let's go! Discord is very eager to get married as soon as possible and has this really weird montage of putting dresses on Fluttershy like she's a doll. Discord, if you haven't noticed by this point, objectifies Fluttershy so much.
Your fiance is very lucky to have you.
Discord.
Oh wait, that's me.
Discord.
Yes, my dear.
I feel weird saying this about a fairly shown emotionally. It's almost always shown through unwanted comments. Fluttershy reiterates 1,000,000 times in the story that she does not enjoy comments like this, and Discord does not stop it.
Are a knockout. Has any pony ever told you that your eyes shine like stars at night? Or that your hair is as soft as rose petals?
Please stop touching my hair.
Or that your coat is as pale as buttermilk?
Please.
Really, my dear, you're simply ravishing.
Please, I really
What?
don't.
Ravishing's not a good enough word? How about stunning? Beautiful?
Stop.
Gorgeous?
Stop.
Alluring?
Stop.
Stop what?
Just stop. Stop touching me and complimenting me.
And it's played off like it's not a big deal and that she just needs to get used to it because he's not saying bad things, he's just complimenting her. Discord is very attentive and generous. He gives her a lot of things and makes sure she's comfortable, though it's not unconditional. If she doesn't give him what he wants or the reaction he wants, he will get angry. But it's forgiving when it's just the beginning of the relationship and he is the villain. Fluttershy convinces Discord to hold off on the wedding, and Discord agrees, but every night he will ask her if she loves him, and when the answer is yes, they will be married as soon as possible.
First, my question.
Yes?
Do you love me?
What?
I said, do you love me?
No?
So Discord's initial scheme is for Fluttershy to fall in love with him so she would never use her element against him. Not for actual happiness, just for manipulation fun, I guess. And that completely goes against the initial reasoning, I thought. Fluttershy is miserable and stays miserable this whole series because she's not a free person. She's a prisoner. Even if she came at her own will, she literally can't do anything she wants. We go back to the main six struggling after Fluttershy left, and the main six reactions to her being gone is very accurate. It seems like the ponies were kind of mad at Applejack for not telling them about Fluttershy's plans, especially Rainbow Dash.
Ponies will do anything for the ones they love. Discord, love, that's a hoot.
But Applejack reiterates that it was her choice and she can do what she wants. There's a scene of Pinkie Pie being really sad and it makes me so upset.
But what if she gets hurt? What if he won't throw her any birthday parties? What if we never see her again?
I'm not a big fan of this Pinkie Pie impersonator, but oh my god.
But we can't step into Discord's realm. That would break the deal. Who said anything about entering his realm?
Wait, are you going to do what I think you're going to do?
Tonight, I will enter Fluttershy's dreams and see how she is faring.
Oh, thank you, Luna.
Wait just a cotton-picking minute. You can enter dreams?
I am the princess of the night.
How often do you poke into ponies' heads?
Worry not, Applejack. I won't tell any pony.
And that feeling is halted once more. Fluttershy has another Discord nightmare, but this time, Princess Luna saves her in a dream since Princess Luna can visit ponies in their sleep. She basically tells Fluttershy to stay strong. She can't do much because she's not allowed. Fluttershy wakes up and Discord is watching her sleep. We go through a montage of him asking if she loves him, which she always replies no. Discord gets more and more angry as she turns him down, to the point he almost completely disregards his own rule and says they'll get married tomorrow.
You promised yourself to me, and you are going to be my wife, love me or not!
Fine. Marry me then. Don't wait for me to love you, because there's no way in this world that I could ever love a monster like you.
Is that so? Well, let's stop wasting our time then. We'll be married first thing in the morning.
Also, this sexist line,
Go to your room.
You're not my mother.
But I am your future husband, so get used to my orders.
Well, I'm your future wife, so get used to my complaints.
love that. Discord does feel bad. However, since he made Fluttershy cry, so he goes to Sakura for advice. Man, Sakura has been pushing this plot along, literally carrying it on her back, and honestly, she does not get treated very well.
If you tell any pony about this, I'll turn you into an acorn and feed you to the squirrels.
Alright. Sakura tells Discord to try and cater to her interests instead of showering her with random ass gifts. And with this newfound information, Discord builds Fluttershy a garden and brings all her animal friends back to her. Discord apologizes and shows her the new addition to their home, which she absolutely loves to the point that she hugs him.
Thank you. This is the most wonderful thing any pony has ever done for me. Thank you. I love it so much. Mr.
Discord, though mean and controlling, is inexperienced in relationships, so the relationship dynamic has the potential of being more even, though in the situation it's never.
That he's in love with rarity and not with.
The Spark is an episode focused mostly on Fluttershy and Discord as they traverse their new lifestyle, or as Discord keeps Fluttershy isolated, however you want to look at it. I know I'm being a bit harsh on Discord. He does have a soft spot for Fluttershy and does show kindness towards her. It just falls flat a bit when you look at the situation in context, and his blatant disregard for her boundaries, which I guess is written off as okay since he's just complimenting her, as I said. Discord has begun to have real feelings for Fluttershy in this episode, or so we're told. Nothing really changes about how he acts towards her, except we do see more of his inner conflict, which is something I really like.
And why would you even be attracted to this pony? I mean, look at her. Yeah, so? She's just so flawless. There's not an ounce of chaos in her. She's just so perfect.
Discord is the god of chaos, so being fond of someone so perfect would go against his very own beliefs. Fluttershy seems a bit happier now that she has a garden to hang out with her animals, but she's still unhappy since, you know, she will never see anyone she loves again. Also, there's alcohol in this universe, and Fluttershy is sober.
I haven't eaten much today.
Well, it's so lovely this evening. We can eat right here. Care for a drink, my dear?
Oh, no, thank you. I don't drink.
I knew that. This is grape juice.
If you say so.
Discord compliments Fluttershy again, and this time she says she likes it. I guess that cancels out all the other times, right?
Don't be so modest, my dear. You're a natural beauty. That's saying a lot, coming from me. So rare I find something in this world so alluring that I did not make myself.
Do you really think I'm beautiful?
More beautiful than rising orange on a rainy chocolate night.
Thanks. I think.
I see that blush, missy. You like it when I call you beautiful, don't you?
Maybe?
Seriously, I would expect some pony like you to be used to such a compliment.
It's not that. It's just that.
Fluttershy alludes to a secret about why she doesn't like to be complimented, and then this happens.
Come on, tell me.
No.
Tell me.
No.
Tell me.
No.
Tell me. Tell me.
No.
Come on, tell me. Oh, tell me.
No.
Tell me.
Stop. Please.
Not until you tell me your secret. Tell me.
Okay, I'll tell you. Just let me finish my cake first.
Oh, all right. Hey, what are you? Stop! Nice try, you devious little thing. Let this be a warning to you that I am the tickle torturer here.
I honestly like this scene until he said tickle torturer. Fluttershy does prove in this episode to be warming up to Discord, but I do wish that she would show at least a little attraction to him through this series. There isn't ever a scene where she really don't get a lot of Fluttershy's thoughts or inner conflicts while she's at Discord, other than she misses her old life and friends, which is of course understandable. The relationship feels very one-sided a lot of the time. But I will say this fanfiction does a good job at making you forget how weird the situation is until, you know, tickle torturer snaps you out of that trance. In this episode, we also focus on Spike and Applejack. Unfortunately, Applejack's character is absorbed so much by Spike that by this point, it's really all she talks or thinks about. She just sulks around wishing Spike liked her back, and he is clueless, of course, because he's young and loves Rarity. Spike asks Applejack to help him with his date with Rarity that he's going to ask her out on.
Sweet Apple Acres is the perfect spot.
Oh?
Yeah, but I don't want her knowing we're having a picnic. So I was wondering if you could help me out. You know, set the place up before Rarity and I get there.
Oh?
And could you also prepare the food? I mean, you're one of the best cooks ever.
Which is so funny because Spike always finds a way to include her in some way throughout the story.
You and Rarity. Don't you think she's a little old for you?
It's just 7 years. It's not like she's old enough to be my mom or anything.
But, maybe you should wait a while before...
Hey, I've waited 3 years. That's plenty enough time for me.
Well, maybe because you're so young, Rarity doesn't...
I may look like a baby, Applejack, but in pony years, I'm practically a teenager. Dragons just happen to age a little slower than ponies.
So, it wouldn't be weird if some pony so much older than you happened to like you a lot?
Like, excuse me? This scene does try to explain the age gap, as I presume the comments were probably filled with questions at this point. So in the story, there's a big age gap between them to the point that Applejack asks Spike himself if it's weird, and Spike says no. So I guess it's okay. And then it happens, the part that caught me so off guard, I screamed.
Oh, Spike. If only you knew what you did to me. Pretending he's beside me.
Saints! Go marching in! No. What are you doing? Is there anyone who can actually...
All alone, I walk with him till morning. Without him, I feel his arms around me. And when I'm in distress, I close my eyes and he has saved me.
Yes, full lyric changes to On My Own, Les Miserables. Applejack singing over her unrequited love for Spike the Dragon. It's beautiful. Sometimes I look at things like this and I just go, humans. Parts of this fanfiction hold up extremely well, but then you do have Spike and Applejack relationship, which, you know, just throws it off course in a way that I wasn't prepared for. Applejack goes to Zecora for advice. Zecora needs to send these ponies a bill because she is not a therapist. Applejack finally admits that she loves Spike.
I'm the element of honesty, but I lie to his face every single day. I love him, okay? It sounds crazy, but I love him. I know he's a little... I love him more than Apple.
Oh my god. I mean, am I overreacting? I don't know. This just makes me so uncomfortable. Zecora tells Applejack to wait until he matures to confess her feelings, which I think was the attempt to brush off the age gap. The thing with age gaps, and especially 7-year ones, is that it's much different when you are a minor versus an adult. You can change so much as you grow up. Yes, Spike's age is vague because dragons age differently to ponies. However, he is a baby canonically and often acts naive in the show and in this fanfiction. I just can't see this ship working unless Applejack is aged down or Spike is aged up. Otherwise, I find it too strange, but you know, that's just me. Fluttershy continues to have nightmares about Discord and explains how they changed over time to him after he asked her to tell him about them.
Fluttershy, tell me.
No.
You tell me this instant, Missy! Fluttershy, I didn't mean...
I think that's very interesting and a good way to show how Discord is trying hard with Fluttershy, even if he does get angry at her a lot. But Fluttershy's perception of Discord never really changes. She's always scared of him. Even if she is being nice to him or seems like she's warming up to him, there's still an underlying fear that's always there and does not go away. Fluttershy asked Discord to stay with her since she says she views him differently than the monster in her dreams. Discord after this takes Fluttershy's stargazing to help her sleep, and I will admit this part is pretty cute. Also, this has some impeccable comedic moments that are accidental, but man.
Beautiful like you. Your eyes.
Also, Discord ruins it by his stupid question.
Do you love me? Check yes or no.
Here you go, my dear. Yes or no, take your pick.
Oh my. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
No, I'm really sorry.
And of course she rejects him again, but she says they could be friends, which is a start, but man, this scene was awkward. Anyway, I do like this little end part. It was so cute, like the way he curled around her. Next episode.
No matter what I try, I cannot get that dragging off my mind.
Episode 7, The Mirror, starts off with the old accidentally snuggling after falling asleep next to each other trope, which I will admit I have a soft spot for. Don't look at me. This episode focuses more on the romantic relationship growing with a little montage of activities that they do together. It's very Beauty and the Beast, which this fan fiction is heavily inspired by. And though Fluttershy has fun on all these mini dates, she always is sad at some point because she remembers something that her friend did or something she wants to tell her friends.
He always told me how fun skating was. If only she were here too.
And Discord does feel sympathy towards her, but not really because she misses her friends, just because she's generally sad. Fluttershy does end up telling Discord that she misses her friends. And what does Discord do? Gives her a magic mirror to watch her friends through, which is very heartbreaking. Fluttershy watches through the mirror as Rainbow Dash and Soren, another member of the Wonderbolts, go on their first date. I'll be honest, doesn't have a whole lot of relevance. I think I'm just gonna skip through a lot of this. Rainbow Dash and Soren are a very popular pairing in the fandom, so I can see this one. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't really care that much. The one relevant thing about this scene is the transition into another song. This time it is a song from the original show called What My Cutie Mark Is Telling Me, except the lyrics are changed to be about the main six missing Fluttershy. It's not bad, and it does follow the formula of that song.
So refined, charming and handsome too. Although he is good company, I can't help feeling blue. No stallion can help me with what I'm going through. There's something missing in my life, and that something is my dear friend Fluttershy.
It's bought the base that literally every MLP child used. Another thing notable that I think is really in character is Twilight's continued search to get Fluttershy back. She literally doesn't stop trying while the others sort of move on. It's really sweet and something Twilight would probably do for real. The last bit is Fluttershy comes in to help him and says she understands why he took her as a bride because he's lonely.
All creatures have feelings.
Don't waste your pity on me. I'm not one of your fuzzy animals. Though, I will admit, it's nice to have some pony to talk to who's not a conjured up duplicate or an animate reflection. And I'm glad it was you who came to me.
I'm kinda glad too.
I do think this moment is nice, and I enjoy how understanding Fluttershy is regardless of everything. Next.
Where it longs to be.
Episode 8, The Day. We're getting into it now, aren't we? In this episode, we learned some backstory between these two. None of this is canon in the show. I don't think Discord's story is ever explained, but this fanfiction tells us that Discord lived in a land of his own species who all created chaos in their own little area until one day a storm wiped out everyone and he was the only one left when he was a child. He sought shelter and fed himself cotton candy and chocolate milk and was eventually found by Princess Luna and Princess Celestia when they were much younger. This is an attempt to explain why he always does cotton candy clowns and chocolate milk. I think it's cute. I didn't really need an explanation for this because Discord is literally chaos and the things he does doesn't need to make sense, but a little backstory never hurt anyone. In this episode, and suddenly in the last episode, Fluttershy does start to show jealousy towards certain things.
Discord, were you in? That is, did you and Celestia?
No. It was nothing like that. I just thought she was the pretty best.
I'd say this is one of the only things that shows her potential attraction and interest to Discord, though every interaction they have other than Discord's comments seems pretty platonic. Fluttershy likes when Discord strokes her hair, but nothing in this romance feels like it's her choice because it isn't, and I think that's why I struggled so hard to pinpoint why I feel so strange about this relationship. It's because we don't really see Fluttershy's initiation in anything romantic. It's all Discord taking the chance. Yes, there are points where Fluttershy genuinely seems to enjoy Discord's company, but what is her genuine interest versus just trying to survive in this place? I'm reading way too much into this, aren't I? Anyway, the relationship does grow a lot in this episode, and I do find it very sweet that Fluttershy is trying to know Discord more. Fluttershy also explains that she doesn't have parents, and that she, like Discord, was alone at one point because other ponies made fun of her when she was younger, and Discord questions this by asking how a pretty thing like her would get bullied. And again, she asked him to stop complimenting her.
And why does it bother you so much?
Well,
Is there somebody else?
What? No!
Then what's going on?
Back at flight camp, there was this colt. I thought he was really cute, and he said he'd treat me to a milkshake. Well, I showed up at the mod shop, but he wasn't there. I waited for an hour. Then he came in, but he was with his friends. They all started laughing at me.
That's right. She actually thought I wanted to go out with her. Did you tell her she was pretty?
And this is why she can't believe when somebody finds her beautiful or attractive. I think that's all well and good, but at the same time, she does not need a reason to not want to be complimented in this way or constantly sought after by someone. She can just not like it. You know? Anyway, Discord promised he's not lying when he said she's beautiful, and also promises
Would never, ever toy with your emotions for my own amusement.
Really?
Not if it meant seeing a frown on that lovely face of yours.
You promise?
I promise.
Yeah, okay. Discord asks Fluttershy again if she loves him, and this time when she says no, he gets upset.
How long do I have to wait?
Discord.
How long? You can't even say a polite no anymore?
Discord, I'm sorry, but...
I'm sorry!
Every time we get somewhere in the relationship, a moment like this happens and it just halts everything. Fluttershy asks for her freedom, and as a happy medium, Discord offers her a date outside of the castle instead. We got a date, y'all, and we get more awooga boing oing oing oing.
Are you ready to...
they head off to their date with their cute Beauty and the Beast fits and have a romantic moonlit dinner with a violin to top it off. Anyway, they dance to the Beauty and the Beast theme song and it's pretty nice. I like this. Princess Luna sees them dancing outside of Discord's barriers but decides to not do anything because they seem to be having a good time. What? And we get another song. I didn't recognize this song personally, but apparently the original is called Music of the Night from Phantom of the Opera. But again, it's heavily altered. The lyrics are changed and it's called Chaos of the Night instead.
As you dream a land of splendor, take the chance to.
It's very, very long. They don't cut the songs down, they do the whole thing. Discord makes Fluttershy uncomfortable again.
That was plain tired.
Discord shut the hell up challenge. At the end of their date, Discord asks to kiss Fluttershy, which is very cute.
Can I? May I? Kiss you?
What?
Sorry, I just never kissed any pony before, and since we've gotten to know each other, I thought you wouldn't mind, but I guess I'm overdoing it, and I'll never ask you again, just this once what was that?
But then she does make the comment of,
well, I've never been kissed either, and if I'm never going to meet any pony else in my life, I won't mind. Go ahead.
Which does ruin the mood, I will say. At the end of this episode, Discord realizes that he's fallen in love with Fluttershy. And that's the end of episode 8.
Please have mercy on them.
Episode 9 is one of the longest episodes in the series along with the finale, so let's get this going. Can you believe I thought this video would be under 30 minutes? This episode is Fluttershy's birthday, and what she's still sad about is not seeing her friends. So when it's time for Fluttershy to blow out her birthday candles, she wishes to visit her friends.
It will be my duty to make it come true.
You promise?
Cross my heart. So, what will it be, my sweet?
I wish to visit my friends.
Sweetheart, I thought we talked about this.
No, we haven't. You've been avoiding the topic since I got here. I think it's time we change that.
She begs him, says she will come back if she leaves. Discord is really reluctant, but eventually agrees to have her friends come to his land instead for a party.
Darling, it's been a month now. They've probably forgotten all about you.
How can you say such a thing?
I'm summarizing this very heavily, but there is a lot of manipulation involved with this because Discord really does not want Fluttershy to have any contact with her friends.
But if you never let my friends visit, who are my bridesmaids going to be?
Bridesmaids?
And I promised Apple Bloom, Sweetie Belle, and Scootaloo they would be my flower girls, and Spike can be the ring bearer, and, well, we need some pony to perform the service. And Twilight's a princess, so she does have the authority.
Wait, back up. Are you saying...
If you will allow my friends to visit whenever I request, I will let you decide the wedding day. And I won't argue.
You mean it?
Yes, I do.
Oh, then how does... tomorrow sound? You said you wouldn't argue unless you changed your mind about seeing your friend.
No,
So romantic. This part is already Discord going back on his promise to not manipulate her feelings. He has changed a bit, but a lot of the times it only seems like he's changing as a facade to get her to care about him or be happy where she is. And again, this is just something that's not to my taste. Romance like this can exist and you can consume it and have fun with it. I just think it's interesting to analyze these elements as it's something that kind of goes unnoticed. if you're uninitiated with this kind of genre. And this is not to say Discord and her don't have cute moments. It's clear that they have chemistry. There was a lot of the times I like their moments together. It's just tainted by a huge power imbalance. Anyway, back to the episode. Discord decides he wants the wedding date to be tomorrow. Fluttershy is unhappy about this because she doesn't love Discord or doesn't know she loves Discord, however you want to interpret it. Discord sent the rest of the main 6A invite and they all show up to party.
Pinky? You're here? You're alive? You haven't forgotten me, have you? Of course you haven't. I haven't forgotten you. Fluttershy! I miss you so much.
All the ponies ask her a lot of questions about her situation, and Discord hangs back, which is understandable because her friends don't like him. Discord
Yes! Victory! The Lord of Chaos triumphs! The crowd goes wild! Come on, don't be sore losers.
You're marrying him tomorrow?
Oh, so you've told them! Yes, our big day is tomorrow.
Fluttershy asks to speak to them alone, but of course he listens to their conversation anyway.
That was very rude of you.
Rude? You're marrying that monster tomorrow! How do you expect us to react?
But you know I'm engaged to him.
We didn't think it would happen now. And now you want us to be a part of it?
I thought you'd want to come to my wedding.
Not when it means watching you get married to a monster.
I will say her friends are being really whiny about being a part of the wedding, especially since they were literally never going to see her again before this.
He may have done some horrible things in the past, but it doesn't make him evil. He's just a lonely creature who wants nothing more than for some pony to love him. After all, he's been asking me every single night if
Wait, I know that blush. Fluttershy, are you in love with him?
Applejack knows that blush and asks Fluttershy if she's in love with Discord, which I guess means she is at this point. However, because her friends push her, she ends up blurting this.
I don't want to marry him tomorrow, but you think I have a choice? It was the only way I could convince him to bring you here. And you know what? Who cares? Who cares if the wedding is tomorrow or next year? I made a deal with him, and it's going to happen whether I like it or not.
So you don't...
No! I don't love him! Don't love him! Don't love him! Don't love him!
Honestly, if this was Am I the Asshole Reddit, I'd say everyone sucks here except Fluttershy. Fluttershy runs into her room, upset, and Discord appears visibly angry, and I genuinely got scared. This is scary because Fluttershy has no power in this situation. She's basically walking on eggshells with Discord this whole story, and he's erupting at this point.
You know, you were a single word.
You were eavesdropping?
You never intended on falling in love with me, did you? This is not just a business deal to you.
Maybe Fluttershy did mess up, but Discord has literally zero patience when it comes to her making mistakes. When Fluttershy literally has to ignore 1 million things he has done wrong.
How can you not love me? Why do you always listen to those wretched ponies who always have to ruin everything?
Discord, I'm sorry.
I don't blame you.
You don't?
Oh no, you're not the one at fault. You've just fallen victim to the real monsters here. Now listen here, Fluttershy. I've made you happy, right?
Yes.
I've treated you well, have I not?
You have.
I've comforted you, gone out of my way to make you smile, granted you your every wish, yes?
That is correct.
I love you.
You do?
That's right, darling. You don't need your friends. All we need is each other. We'll be together forever. For all eternity.
Together. Forever.
And Discord officially loses me. Making her a husk of herself so she'll stay is so crazy. And this scene as a love confession is so sad. Come on. Rainbow Dash finds Discord hypnotizing Fluttershy and a big old fight scene ensues, and pretty much everyone loses because Discord is an immortal god.
What have you done to Fluttershy?
Oh, she's fine. Just a little brain dead. Right, dear?
Yes, my love.
No!
Brain dead? Brain dead? That's crazy.
Turtle love you.
I said shut up!
Applejack!
Oh my god. Like I said, the comedic moments, man. Fluttershy breaks out of the trance and is mad at Discord. Who would have thunk? Discord ties Fluttershy up and it's time for another song. Let's go. This time, it's Frollo's song from Hunchback of Notre Dame. You know the one the minister sings about his lust towards a woman who hates him and he blames for tempting him? You know that one? Not helping his case. Especially since in the end of the song he tries to kill her friends. Fluttershy says she'll stay with him, and for her to prove it, Discord asks for a kiss.
Found another kiss.
Kiss?
In front of...
You said you wouldn't resist.
No! You will not touch her!
That does it!
Rainbow, Discord, no!
Fluttershy! No, 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 no. Fluttershy! Are you... Please don't cry.
He broke the fuck out of her back. What the hell? I know Discord didn't mean to hurt Fluttershy, but he meant to hurt her friend that bad, so this instance does snap Discord out of his little evil tangent, and he is apologetic, but this little instance completely ruins anything that has happened before this. In my opinion, you can't come back after. Discord feels so bad, in fact, that he kicks everyone out, including Fluttershy, going off the if you love someone, set it free mentality. This is Discord's one really good first deed, but this one action should not excuse everything he's done, you know? And with that, we're on to the finale.
Full embrace, despite your haunted face.
Episode 10, and this episode is 59 minutes long. This episode follows Discord and Fluttershy as they learn to live apart after living together for a month. Fluttershy already misses Discord and is noticeably depressed. And she was depressed before she met Discord too, which makes it seem like she wasn't truly happy until she had Discord in her life, which is an interesting thing. It's interesting to look at it that way. Applejack is extremely defensive over Fluttershy and Discord as she's in this whole story.
Y'all still don't get it, do y'all? Ugh.
Applejack, wait!
It's projecting, but what this fanfiction tells us is that you can forgive anything done to you in the name of love. I feel like I'm being hypercritical of these relationship dynamics. I started this off wanting to be more positive or positive as possible, but I can't ignore these major story elements that unfortunately did not age well. The production and the amount of people who worked on this project is impressive, especially for a free YouTube series. This project had blood, sweat, and tears poured into it, and I think that is extremely admirable and something I want to put in my own work. The series inspired me so much when I was a child. I loved it, and if you love it too, I want you to keep your joy. I just find it interesting to look back on something you love so fondly and truly start to see the holes in it. It has so many good elements, they just don't always work together, and that's extremely forgivable. I think it's good to reflect on things that you love before we finish the series up, because I want to reiterate, this is all in good fun. Anyway, back to the episode. So Fluttershy is traumatized and is in love with Discord. Fluttershy sings a song about Discord and completely forgives gives him. This is arguably the first time Fluttershy has explicitly shown romantic feelings toward Discord. This is a song from the musical Anastasia. Again, the lyrics are changed to suit the story. Fluttershy has Discord dreams again, but this time Discord dies in the dream. I wish one time in this fanfiction Fluttershy had a romantic dream towards Discord that she was into a little bit and was like, oh, that was weird. Like, you know those dreams you have about somebody that you know and then that dream makes you have a crush on them? That's what I want. Fluttershy goes to Applejack again and talks about her dreams again. The parallel there, I love that. Fluttershy blurts out that she loves Discord.
Oh, I can't deny it anymore. I love him. Despite it all, I love him. I didn't realize it until I saw him dying. It's crazy, but I love him. Do you hear me? I love him!
Applejack confesses her love for Spike.
And how would you know?
Because that's exactly how I felt after Spike saved me from the Timberwolves.
Woohoo, my favorite ship has sailed, guys. Yay! I'm sorry. The main six overhears her big love confession, and though they don't understand her feelings, they still have her back to go to the Everfree Forest with her. As they travel, they unfortunately get attacked by Timberwolves and Owen right at the last moment before she can be attacked.
Why don't you pick on someone your own size? Like a chihuahua!
This is the first instance of animation. I love that. They were wilding out in the last episode, I'll tell you. Discord saves the main six lives, and because of that, they pretty much forgive everything he's done. He also heals Twilight, Rainbow Dash, and Pinkie Pie because they like broke everything. This is the moment Fluttershy finally confesses her love for Discord.
I love you.
Huh?
It's true. It's taken me a long time to realize it, but I love you.
You mean it?
I do. I love you.
But how? I'm not exactly Prince Charming, you know.
I don't care how you look. You're a prince in my eyes.
Really?
I will say though, Rainbow Dash is spitting.
I mean, it's Discord. Discord. Remember? Spirit of chaos and disharmony? Trying to take over Equestria? Twice? Thrice? Nearly forced Fluttershy into marriage and almost killed us? That Discord?
She makes fair points. And even if it is brushed under the rug, at least there was some acknowledgement. We then get a time skip, which I don't like. We never truly see this relationship blossom or see how their dynamic is without all the baggage. We just cut right to their wedding day. I understand it's because this is the bride of Discord. She has to get married to him at the end. The rest of the episode mostly follows ponies getting ready for the wedding and Discord getting cold feet, them having to back him off the edge of the cliff, and Spike suddenly has feelings for Applejack now.
Thank goodness! I'm having a problem with...
He's a year older. He's older, guys. And then the wedding finally happens. And we get some fully animated portions in this, guys. This is so cool and is filled with Easter egg, which is another great touch. I always love stuff like that. They kiss and everyone is disgusted.
Okay.
Right, bravo!
I didn't get this joke. Like, this is a wedding, guys. They're gonna kiss. And at the reception, Spike and Applejack finally get their little dance.
You mean it?
Sure, if you want to.
Yes.
No. Fluttershy and Discord ride off, wink wonk, and Emma died. The end. Well, that was a whirlwind. I genuinely didn't want to make a video this long, but I feel I could not give you the full scope of this fanfiction if I didn't explain nearly everything in it, so forgive me. I hope you enjoyed this regardless. This video about broke me, I'm gonna be real. I know other creators have done deep dives on this fanfiction, but I feel I had to put my own 2 cents in. I genuinely enjoyed revisiting this. This creator did not skimp out on content. There's so much content you can consume with this story. And if you want to check it out, if you've never seen this, I recommend. It's a fun little watch. It's clear this fanfiction didn't age the best, but there are very good things about it and good elements that still make it watchable today. And of course, there is the sequel, Daughter of Discord, which I haven't watched in a long time either. If you guys really enjoy this for some reason, I will do it, but only if you really want it, okay? More stuff coming soon, some spooky stuff coming soon later this month, wink wink. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and as always, peace.